job seeker increase you've announced equates to about a bus pass a day.
The first surplus in 15 years. Jim Chalmers hoping to help Aussies struggling with the cost of living.
Dividing the pie, we are live in Canberra. Treasurer, good morning.
Help for people who are doing it tough at the same time as we invest in the future.
Now comes the task of selling the budget in earnest, as the government tries to square its promise to leave no one behind with a surplus that suggests it could have afforded to do a little bit more.
Greens leader Adam Bandt says Labor's budget is a portrayal of Australians doing it tough.
It was definitely the best budget in quite a few years for families like mine, but ultimately I don't think it went far enough.
Single mother Angela Finch was listening in from Hobart. Her youngest is 6, so she would have only had 2 more years on the single parenting payment before being moved onto the dole. Now she'll have 8.
That change has given my family time to breathe. I can now try and formulate a plan to get us into a better financial situation.
Less expected but very welcome is the money to reward doctors who bulk bill, especially for children and concession card holders. Angela says her concession card too often closes doctors' doors instead of opening them.
I tried several clinics and we couldn't get a doctor, and currently haven't had a GP for over 12 months. With a family of 4 and 3 of us have ongoing health conditions, not having a GP is something that I worry about a lot, and I'm hoping that now I can get back on the phone and try and find a GP that might take a family like mine.
730 first met Angela 2 years ago when Josh Frydenberg handed down a budget branded as a budget for women, with a focus on helping single parents buy homes with tiny deposits.
Australia's fate could have been so much worse.
In the 2 years since, things did get worse for many families like this one. Angela dropped her studies and took a casual job as her payments no longer kept up with increasing prices.
You can't come out and say we're not going to leave anyone behind when you've actually made the decision to leave people in poverty.
Prime Minister, what do you say to criticism that you're not bold enough, that you are too incremental in your approach?
This is a budget that doesn't leave people behind, but no one held back, that we'd aspire to a better future as well. This budget is perfectly consistent with that.
Do you support the increase in job seeker payments?
Well, we're going to assess that. Obviously, we've been in the lockup like the media yesterday. We haven't had months.
But you know the basic figure, $40 a fortnight.
And we'll look at all of those figures and we'll make an announcement in relation to that tomorrow night.
With the opposition not yet showing its hand on whether it will oppose some budget measures, it's not just voters that the government needs to convince. Without the opposition, it'll need to negotiate with the Senate crossbench.
Is the current government going to splash cash into the future? Sure as God made little green apples, there's another election coming, so the splash will happen. But they're playing safe this time around, and I'm not going to poo-poo that, because I like playing it safe too.
Tammy Tyrrell, who was elected last year as the second member of the Jackie Lambie network, is one of the senators who holds the balance of power. She knows better than most in Parliament what it's like to live on the dole, now known as job seeker, but thinks the government has the balance right.
I know how tough it can be, and I know how hard it is to cover the bills on the dole. This is what I would probably do. I would make sure that all my ducks were covered and that everybody was safe and sound. It's not flashy, it's not pretty, it's not like gregarious and over the top, but it's safe.
Look, I think they needed to be restrained in this year. We do have inflationary issues in the economy right now, and running a surplus or a small deficit is really the right thing to do in this current environment. I think they have really tried hard in terms of this balance of a bit of restraint, a bit of repair and a bit of relief, and certainly the relief was quite targeted.
It's got to match my moral compass. If I can't sleep at night, I won't vote for something.
On the budget measures themselves, are you inclined to support them?
Yeah.
But the Greens leader is yet to be convinced.
Labor hasn't made tough choices, they've made bad choices. Labor's made everyone else make tough choices. Even Scott Morrison delivered a bigger lift to job seeker than this government is doing.
The shadow of that 2021 decision hangs over the political debate about whether Labor has lived up to its promise of fairness.
It is true that this is the single largest increase in the job seeker payments since the mid-80s, year on year. That is true.
The Greens may not be happy that this increase is smaller, but they won't block it in the Senate.
Look, the Greens aren't going to stand in the way of people getting a bit of extra money in their pocket, but we will be fighting for more, and we'll be fighting to fund that by making the big gas corporations pay their fair share of tax.
What they will pick a fight on is one of the only revenue measures in the budget, changes to the petroleum resources rent tax that are forecast to raise $2.4 billion over the forward estimates.
If Labor brings legislation to the Parliament that's written and backed by the gas industry, because they know they'll get out of paying any tax on the billions of dollars of windfall profits that they're making at the moment, Labor can't rely on our support for that.
While the Greens' position on the PRRT shows the government still has to win support for some budget measures, it believes its overall message is one that reflects a different, more generous Australia than we've seen for a while.
I think the broader Australian community, they want a bit of help. They're getting help from us in the budget, but I think that there is a generosity inherent in the Australian character that says if you are doing it the toughest, you need the most help.
The Treasurer knows, though, that however much work went into this budget, there is still much harder work ahead.
I think there's more work to do. Closing that structural balance, as is suggested in these budget papers, relies a lot on the good fortune of the economy and labour markets. I think we really need to take a serious look at tax reform.
Families like mine, we understand structural deficit, we live there, we totally understand it, and to turn around and say that, well, we've saved a bit, you've saved a bit because you're not paying all your bills. That's not something we're allowed to do. Families in my situation can't do that. So I don't think it's good enough.